I just read a report that America is now in more credit card debt than ever before, more than $1.1 trillion. You know, my grandfather used to say, there's no stress like money stress, son. Well, are you feeling that right now? Let me help. You've got a friend in the mortgage business in me, and I've helped families just like yours save hundreds of dollars a month. Seriously, we've helped listeners to this podcast save up to $800 a month. At savewithconrad.com, we routinely help our podcast listeners consolidate all of their high interest rate credit cards into just one much lower monthly payment. Would you like to lower your monthly payments? Wouldn't it be nice to skip your next 2 house payments? Are you finally ready for some breathing room and peace of mind? Start saving money today with your friend in the mortgage business, me, at savewithconrad.com. You don't need perfect credit. You don't need money out of your pocket. And if we can't help you save some cash, we won't waste your time. You see, at savewithconrad.com, we don't say no. We say not yet, but here's how. We want to be your mortgage advisor for life. So find out how easy it is to finally get rid of your credit card debt once and for all, get a much lower monthly payment, and even skip your next 2 house payments. Let's find out how much money you can save for free at savewithconrad.com.
NMLS number 2129, equal housing lender.
Savewithconrad.com. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to My World. And of course, we couldn't do it without the Hall of Famer, the greatest professional wrestler of all time, your friend and mine, Double J, Jeff Jarrett. Jeff, how are you, man?
Oh, my man, Conrad Thompson. How are we doing today? Old Double J, the last outlaw. He's doing pretty damn good. Feel good, Connie? We're about to enter into a new era as true football, and I know there's another league coming up, and for folks that are across the pond or down under or out west, if you like way out west, football's over in America, Conrad, and so I don't know, man. There's always just kind of a change of the year, and now spring's right around the corner, and I don't know. Always things are changing, but happy to be here, Conrad. Our topic today, when I started peeling the layers of the onion back, we'll have some spirited discussions, maybe not spirited, but the opinions of the journalists back in the day, and I don't think they've changed even as we sit here on February of 2025. Anyhow, Connie, how you doing, pal? This topic's going to be a lot of fun, a whole lot of fun.
We're going to be talking about Against All Odds 2005, but before we get there, boy, there's a lot to unpack. We should start with the big game this past weekend. Jeff, everybody's talking about the absolute collapse of Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. All the conversation about him being one of the all-time greats, and he's the GOAT, and see you later, Tom Brady, and no more Tay-Tay. Man, they didn't follow the script. I mean, even the damn logo for Super Bowl was red and yellow. It was supposed to be the three-peat. And, well, we don't need that after all, Mr. Riley. What'd you think, man? We didn't see the sports history we thought. It was history of another kind. Shout out to Jalen Hurts and the rest of the Philadelphia Eagles. Man, didn't see this coming. What'd you think?
Well, Connie, I mean, being the Roll Tide Alabama, you're going to throw Devontae Smith in there as well, right?
Oh, of course, dude. What a history-making game he had. I don't know if you saw, but, I mean, not only does he win the Heisman, but he's won a national championship and a Super Bowl. And how many people can say they caught a pass in a national championship and a Super Bowl? It's pretty crazy what he's been able to do.
Where do you go to college?
Roll Tide.
What conference are they in?
That'd be the SEC kind of stuff.
Yeah, I didn't hear any Ohio State mentions out there. Get folks all riled up. But anyhow, what a script writer, if it's a script, having the Eagles go out to that big win. But, Conrad, to get a little philosophical, but this is why they play the game, I guess you could say. I texted you Friday night coming back from my daughter's game, and or that was Saturday, whatever. Man, what life lessons sports will teach you. My daughter beat a team less than a month ago by 44 points. They lost by 1 on Friday. Same team, same players on the court. I think coaching and overconfidence and mindset. Sunday, they were up by 15 in the third quarter. We were down. Well, we've been down all year, a couple of starters and all that. Up 15 in the third. get beat by 3. Tough weekend around the Jarrett household. But as the game rolled on last night, the big game, I just thought to myself, as Connie says, I kind of put Andy Reid up on a pedestal, and I think coaching is, I don't say everything, but man, it's a lot of times the decision maker. And again, Andy Reid and his pedigree and his team around him, obviously his players, both sides of the ball, but they didn't have a damn thing for that Eagles defense, and everybody talking about the Eagles offense coming in, and they did produce, and they put up a 40 fight and all that. But man, when you shut Patrick Mahomes down, like completely down, those garbage points in the fourth quarter, but my God, Conrad, it was impressive. So
it felt like wrestling, dude. It felt like the Cody Rhodes Roman Reigns story. He finished his story, Jalen Hurts, that is. And what a story that is. Like, if you're not even a real hardcore football fan, I encourage you, look into Jalen Hurts' story. His story at Alabama and what happened to him there, and then that he persevered, went to Oklahoma and made it to the NFL and lost in the Super Bowl, but got another bite at the apple. It was very pro wrestling like, right?
When you're leaving, to me, the biggest thing that, look, as real football fans, Jalen Hurts got replaced, folks. He got benched in the biggest game of the year,
the national championship game.
And that quarterback currently plays for the Miami Dolphins if he can get on the field. But man, to get benched in the national championship game, that's like I don't even know how to give that a wrestling analogy, Conrad, but that was, and then to go to Oklahoma and persevere and come back, get to the Super Bowl. Was that his rookie year or second year? But anyway, the first time he went to the Super Bowl, Conrad. But anyway, got beat by Mahomes, and he comes back this year and just beats the shit out of him. It was impressive. Yeah, what a spectacle. Man, there were some stars at the game, weren't they? They did some headshots here and there. And yeah, buddy, here in America, it is. I'm curious to see what that rating it'll be, because now they're getting all the streaming numbers in and the devices in there. How many people are will have seen it? It's quite the spectacle.
I think it falls off a cliff in the second half. I could be wrong, but it was so lopsided. If I didn't have a house full of folks, I probably would have watched something else. I do want to ask you about the halftime show. I know that that's been kind of split 50-50. And I think if you're of the right demographic, you loved it. And if you're not of the right demographic, you didn't like it. And I don't mean any other demo other than age, because my dad was like, I have no idea what's happening right now. But the kids in my house, man, they absolutely loved it. I'm a Kendrick Lamar fan. What'd you think of the halftime show, Jeff?
So we had a group text, our family group text, and obviously Cody's the youngest. He's 18. And so it goes 20, 23, 24, 28. Obviously me and Karen, and then some other folks were chiming in, boyfriends and that kind of stuff. Totally mixed reviews. I really thought, Conrad, I can't help but, whether it's not just a wrestling analogy, I'll put on my executive producer cap. And I'm thinking to myself, what demo are they trying to appeal to? Like, who are they going after? The tickets to see it live are so freaking expensive. But the audience, the viewing audience, obviously who they're going for, and who are they? Who are they going after? Are they going after? I don't know. That to me, that made me answer the question, because Kendrick Lamar won all those Grammys this week, and so
5 of them, 5 Grammys.
You say he's not, but man, all that kind of got exposed when you hear kind of the music spokes, and Beyonce winning the country album and all the lightning rods on both sides. I'm not just saying one-sided. I just the mass appeal, because I've read articles both ways, Deadline, Daily Mail, Variety. I read a couple of different reviews, and they're split. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the spectacle. The thing I liked the most is it was kind of him. Yeah, and they had a lot of production, a lot of dancers, but it wasn't over theatrical. So I thought that strategy worked. How did he play to the live audience? That'll be a theme too on today's podcast. How do you think, could you tell, Conrad, how he played to the live audience? Because I like all forms of music. I like the entertainment. I like the spectacle. And rap is not like the anthem sing-alongs for the most part. So I think that the nature in and of itself, that genre is not always going to be as widely acceptable when you don't have pop music.
Respectfully, rap is not the sing-along genre that you enjoy, but it is. If you've ever been to a rap concert, half of the time the rappers just hold the mic out to the crowd and the crowd doesn't. I learned that the hard way when I overpaid for Drake tickets like 15 years ago. I had a girlfriend who really wanted to go, and we went, and I was like, we could have hung around with a bunch of people smoking weed and just listened to them sing the songs and saved ourselves the trip to Nashville, but I digress. I enjoyed the show. I thought it was a fun performance, but I was kind of in on that whole rap beef, if you will, this past summer. So I liked it, but I don't think everybody did.
I got enlightened to the rap beef. Drake and
Kendrick Lamar, yeah.
No, and somebody else. There's a third.
Yeah, J. Cole, but that's not really. He bowed out very quickly.
Oh, okay. So I didn't get accurate information correct from the daughters.
Well, we'll talk about it offline, but it was such a wrestling angle last night. Like that was the culmination of a wrestling angle, what we saw last night.
Boy, okay.
And I think if you kept up with, much like a lot of our listeners keep up with all of the wrestling news and rumor and innuendo, if you were in that world for hip hop, then you would have seen last night maybe in a different light.
I got you. Okay.
But either way, here's what we all saw in a different light last night. And I can't believe this is a thing, but everything's wrestling.
Of course.
The internet wrestling community couldn't help but share Vince McMahon was at the Super Bowl.
Yep.
And he doesn't have the goofy mustache anymore. And it doesn't look like he's maybe prioritized size the way he has in the past. I think this might be the healthiest, best looking Vince McMahon we've seen in a long time.
Guess who enlightened me to that photo?
Who's that?
Cody.
Really?
Yeah, but just look, and we all do it, but man, he is a second screen fiend. It's kind of amazing how he watches everything because it's on the TV and he's watching it. And it's not that he doesn't watch play by play, but man, I mean, he's scrolling constantly. And there was all kind of things he picked up. There was a Patrick Mahomes shot after he threw the pick six with his bottom lip kind of stuck out, and he kind of beat. Did you see it? I mean,
I did. Yeah.
I mean, Cody was showing me and Karen, we were cracking up. It's just like real time. That was as entertaining as the game at times, or maybe more. But he said, "Hey, Dad, look, Vince," and that's the first thing I thought, Conrad. I said, "Man, he looks healthy.
He looks good." Yeah, and I was actually thinking, and I was wondering, and I actually asked my group chat because I think this might be right. Since Tony started AEW way back when, is that the first time those guys have been under the same roof? I'm not suggesting that Vince McMahon hung out with Tony Khan. I'm not suggesting that, but I am saying. I know that Tony used to go to WWE shows. He doesn't anymore, obviously, but back in the pre-AEW days, obviously, Tony went to WWE programs. And I know that, as a member of the NFL, he had an opportunity to see how the sausage was made and things like that before. But I don't think since it started, him and Vince have been in the same place at the same time until Super Bowl.
That I would not be the one to ask that kind of trivia. I'm not up on, but
isn't that interesting though?
Yes. Yeah. Very interesting.
It's also interesting to think about what's happening in the wrestling world right now.
Conrad, do you need some carrots for that rabbit hole? Are you going in that rabbit hole?
No. I mean, do you got something you want to drop on me?
No. I'm messing with you because you were saying, now, is this the first time? And we're just.
Oh, no. I'm not implying or suggesting anything.
You're fine. I just said, hey, do you want some carrots while you're heading down that rabbit hole? That's all I said.
Well, I do want to get down the rabbit hole of WWE releases. Since you and I have recorded, it's come out that there's been a handful of WWE releases. And for a lot of people, I'm sure that's really, really devastating news. But it doesn't have to be. We've seen a lot of great things happen after a WWE release. I mean, it wasn't that long ago. Drew McIntyre and even Cody Rhodes found themselves released from WWE on the outside looking in. And, well, take a look at where they are now. When you had a chance to see that news come across your phone over the weekend that there were going to be some WWE releases, including friends of ours like Gallows and Anderson,
Yep.
What was your immediate reaction?
It's another sign to me just how the business just continues to rapidly evolve. Because I'm back in the era. It was the post WrestleMania releases. Back when, I mean, WWE was called WWF and it wasn't a private company, and hell, Vince was even flying commercial if we want, it just how the business evolved. I'd almost would say that I'm a little surprised that we haven't seen more because of, look, we can talk inside the bubble wrestling all we want, but that organization is, and we talked on that clip the other day, it's driven by Ari Emanuel. It is, I don't say he's the furthest thing from a wrestling guy, but he's not a wrestling guy. And Shapiro, they're and I'm saying this in a completely positive way. They're completely bottom line driven and turnover. And I often refer to that Jack Welch book of he's the one who claimed to fame GE and a lot of things on every year. The 10%,
You cut the bottom 10% every year.
Always. And for the health of the company, that doesn't count into restructuring and doing this and doing that. And just, that WWE is a completely different organization than they were pre-Endeavor. So I am, they're the pipeline of, NXT to, and bringing people up to the other brands and the TNA relationship. And they're not going to carry anybody. I don't see it. I don't think they're going to carry anybody on their roster. Matter of fact, I think more's coming. I would say more's coming in a continual, there is no more post WrestleMania and then take a deep breath and then you're good for another 12 months. I think those days are gone. I think every couple of months, that's just going to be the nature of the beast because of the way they operate now.
And by the way, I don't think that always has to be a bad thing.
Can I finish that? Yeah. You know what?
Yeah, please do.
I think it is absolutely, I mean, I'm not sure I could even stress this enough. I think it is absolutely, man, I can't put it into words how healthy it is for the industry because it keeps a innate drive in things that no need in being paranoid to enter that, but just kind of the overall drive and the health and the motivation that it kind of puts throughout the entire industry. I just think that's big time beneficial. There was a guy that here locally that is just starting his training, and he's like, "Hey man, I want you to, whatever I see in the gym, give me kind of words of advice." And I've told him the same thing 2 or 3 times over the last month or so. Hey, dude, I'm going to be just real honest with you. Yes, you got to learn the basics, but don't get into this business unless you really love it, because it is a hard kicking the balls kind of business that you really got to love it to succeed, period.
Well, I think a lot of those folks do really love it, and I can't wait to see what they do next. It's one of those deals where this is a necessary step. You take a look at really successful careers, guys like Dustin Rhodes, guys like Jeff Jarrett, and everybody in between. They've all been there. They've all left, and that didn't mean their life ended. Their love of professional wrestling continued, and they all wound up in a better place. So it is what you make of it. Not to sound too DDP, but I'm really excited for the opportunity that some of those talent have now that they're outside of the confines of WWE. They get to put their hands on the paintbrushes for the first time in a while. and I can't wait to see what they come up with.
Yeah, it's good. It's so cliche. It's one door closes, another opens. Conrad, we both lived that over and over. And
Oh,
over.
yeah.
Oh, my gosh. It's so true. But you got to walk through that door, folks. Create opportunities. You got a chance.
Well, let me help you create an opportunity. I mean, I think we've all, like this past January, we all probably said things like, I'm going to eat more veggies and start hiking. And then by February, we're like, I just want my asshole to stop burning when I go to the bathroom. Well, the Tushy bidet can help you clean up after all your bullshit. You guys think you have problems until you hear another dude fighting for his life in the toilet stall next to you. Guys, our bowels are a shit show, but your cleanup routine doesn't have to be. 88% of people have already shit the bed on their resolutions, but you can still get your ass right by washing with a Tushy bidet. I'm a big believer in this. I know that this is a funny read and it is a funny product, but this is a serious endorsement for me. I have a Tushy on every toilet I own. I'm not kidding. I got it here at the lake. I got it down at the beach. I'm going to have a Tushy forever. I'm a big believer in the Tushy Wave bidet. That's what it's about. Tushy is the modern bidet attachment that instantly transforms your bathroom habits and your butt health for life. Instead of wiping yourself raw with toilet paper, Tushy gently removes 99% of the bacteria while protecting your natural skin barrier thanks to one natural ingredient. Fresh water, baby. Tushy has 2 new ultra sleek bidet seats, Wave and Oasis, with both front and rear wash to clean all those hard to reach places. The Tushy Wave and Oasis bidet easily attaches to your existing toilet without the need for additional plumbing or even electricity. They even have a quick release button to remove the seat for instant deep cleaning. Installation is simple and only takes about 10 minutes to complete. Literally anyone can do it. Yes, your mom can install a Tushy. Tushy bidet gives you 2-in-1 benefits. We're talking reducing irritation and preventing micro tears with soothing water instead of scratchy toilet paper or damaging wet wipes. It's also easy to use. You just sit down, do your business, and then turn the knob on for a refreshing stream of clean water. Once you're done, simply pat dry with toilet paper. People who have made this switch to Tushy use up to 80% less TP. No more clogged toilets. Save your money and your ass at the same time. Every Hello Tushy bidet comes with a 30-day hassle-free return and a 12-month warranty. There's still time to get your ass right for life. For a limited time, our listeners can get 10% off their first bidet order when you use our code MyWorld at checkout. That's 10% off for your first bidet order at hellotushy.com with the promo code MyWorld.
Connie,
is there anything better than getting your MJF real clean with a Tushy?
I mean, you could not have said that read or that line any better. Mr. Silva, can you put that graphic up one more time? Because I just got to say that, your reads are fantastic. And folks, Tushy bidet is the modern bidet for people who poop. But this line says it all. Up-level your whole bathroom experience. And that's whole, H-O-L-E. Up-level your whole bathroom experience. HelloTushy.com/MyWorld.
Use that promo code MyWorld. You're absolutely going to love it. I'm a big believer in getting my MJF squeaky clean, and Hello Tushy helps me get rid of all the MJF, just flush it right out of my system. Go right now. Check it out. Hello Tushy and get 10% off with our promo code MyWorld. Hey, speaking of that nothing happening son of a bitch, MJF, he's going to be wrestling tomorrow night against our great close personal friend, Dusty Rhodes. And I, for one, am looking forward to seeing MJF get his Tushy kicked all over the arena. How pumped are you to see Dusty Rhodes finish what you started?
I mean, you and me both. You know what's kind of bizarre? I will one day get my hands on the little bastard. But his arrogance, literally from the first week of this year, when I ruffled his feathers, here's where you kind of just can kind of see how things are really at. I have my eyes focused on getting my shot. Ooh, excuse me. And I've let the whole world know that. I ruffled his feathers, but did you ever hear him challenge me to a match, Connie?
Nope.
Did you ever have him say, hey, whatever, derogatory name he could come up with. All he wanted to do was just kind of trade barbs and repeat and rehash and all the nonsense he wants to do. But I never heard him say, Last Outlaw, why don't we fight each other? And whoever wins that, and then we can fill in the blank with whatever the winner prize needs to be. But I never did hear that. So good old Dustin, I love it. He has his eyes set on him, and it's kind of the domino effect, Connie. What I said on January 1st obviously ruffled MJF's feathers big time. Well, MJF said some things in that night in Cincinnati, and we showed a little bit on camera, but Dustin was very upset at some things that MJF said, and that played out on TV again this past week. So I'm looking forward to Dustin giving him a good old Texas ass whooping. It'll be a hell of a match, but a hell of an ass whooping. He's going to need him a tushy the next day for sure.
Austin, Texas. It's happening tomorrow night. Go get your tickets at AEWTIX.com. And I don't know if everyone listening to this is a regular watcher of AEW, but I managed to catch the entire show on Wednesday and on Saturday. I thought those are two of the best shows I've seen from AEW in a while. I really enjoyed it. The crowds were hot. They were really fun wrestling shows. And I know that some of our listeners have already decided, oh, I don't like modern wrestling. I like the old stuff, and that's why I listen to the pod. I hear you. I would challenge you. Just go watch last week's show. I think they were both very good shows. And I'm looking forward to seeing MJF get his ass kicked up and down the boulevard there in Austin, Texas. I think you and Dustin might have a saying for him. I think I'm using this right. He's all hat, no cattle.
That's a good little Texas Southern saying there, Connie. That's all, pal. All hat. I like it. Yeah, it's going to be a good one. Yeah, you just said something. Give it a shot. As I was going through the research, a little bit Saturday night, a little bit Sunday, and this morning, a little bit more about that fan crowd engagement. Man, it's everything. And as I was watching the halftime show last night, one of the things I was wishing for, man, I'd love to be there live.
Yeah.
To kind of hear what the reaction was, because either they didn't have it mic'd well, or there were some fans sitting on their hands last night. I'll just say that, Conrad.
Well, listen, I think you got to know what you're listening for too. There's one line in that song that everybody goes crazy for, and they went crazy for it there. And listen, we could break down the Kendrick Lamar performance until the cows come home. I think we're all really sad that football's over, but I am looking forward to this weekend. I don't know if you've seen this, Jeff. I don't even know that the poll's out as we're recording, but I'm pretty sure Alabama's the number one ranked team in all the land in basketball. Did you hear that Alabama's a basketball school now, and they're having their very biggest game of all time in Tuscaloosa? It's Alabama-Auburn this Saturday.
At Bama
in Tuscaloosa, the same day as the All-Star game for the NBA, the same day as AEW in Australia. I mean, I'm looking forward to this. Saturday is going to be appointment television in my household.
Well, Auburn, the SEC, again, is beating each other up because I think Tennessee's been ranked number one. Florida has knocked off Tennessee, and they did Auburn on Saturday, which knocked them out of the number one ranking. Bama, I think, has been up there before or in and out. And so they've got Auburn. I would not bet against Bruce Pearl. He is a hell of a coach. Wow, Conrad. A number one game in Tuscaloosa against the biggest rival. Oh, boy. That'll get a number too, pal. SEC basketball ratings are up too. Extraordinarily up. Of course they are. But wow, Connie, you do. And down under, Brisbane Entertainment Center. And it's beautiful this time of year. You know, it's late summer, right? Yeah, it's late summer down under. So, yeah, buddy.
Grand Slam Australia. It's going down this Saturday. I can't wait to check it out. Mariah May is going to be in there with Timeless Tony Storm. I think they've done a fabulous job building to this one. We're going to see Will Ospreay team up with Kenny Omega, arguably the two best wrestlers in the entire world, taking on Kyle Fletcher and Takeshita. Then Okada versus Buddy Matthews. That in and of itself is going to be a treat. Jay White is teaming with Cope to take on the Death Riders. And boy, John Moxley cut one of the best promos I've seen in a while in AEW this past Saturday But then maybe what has the internet buzzing more than anything, and I think this is what makes wrestling so fun, Mercedes Moné, who most people believe to be one of, if not the very best women's wrestler in the world, taking on Harley Cameron, who, man, has come out of nowhere and gotten over with a puppet. And boy, is she entertaining. And the fans were with it. I can't wait to see this show, man. I think they've done a good job building the Grand Slam Australia. Can't wait to check it out. What do you want to see this weekend, Jeff?
Well, and this may or may not surprise you. I want to see Buddy and Okada.
Yeah.
Buddy, he was on, I shouldn't say, the Melbourne Stadium show. So you have Tony, you have Jay White. I know he's New Zealand, but you've got New Zealand, Australia. You've got Buddy, you've got Harley, you've got Tony, you got Jay White. So a lot of home country flavor, if you will. Tony specifically, I think she's up around Gold Coast, but seeing folks go back home in Australia, that's a 17-hour flight from San Francisco. I mean, it's a long way over there. And so these folks, they don't get the opportunity to perform on a big stage, and they're going to get to do it in a big kind of way. So I'm happy for all the folks that are getting to go back home. But I kind of, in my gut, it tells me Buddy and Okada are the sleeper of the show. I'm really looking forward to that.
I want to give a shout out to Buddy Matthews. I saw him, I guess it was 6 years ago. I think it was 2019. There was a Royal Rumble in Phoenix, and Bruce was not back with WWE yet. And we had just done a show at Stand Up Live as like a pre-show before the big pay-per-view. And WWE had hooked me up, and I had some great seats, and I got to sit closer than I have in a while at a big time pay-per-view. And I really was excited to see there was a 4-way match on the pre-show that, believe it or not, I was excited to see because I'd never seen Kenta up close before. And I'd heard a lot about Kenta. Everybody knew about the GTS. And I mean, he had so much buzz online. I went into that match really excited to see him. But when the match was over, it was like a 10-minute match or something like that. I remember thinking, man, Buddy Murphy's stuff, I can't poke holes in it. Of course, now these days he's Buddy Matthews, but man, I could not poke holes in his stuff. He is an incredible performer. And maybe you're familiar with Okada's game. I want to give Buddy some props. That dude, he can go.
And that's why I said I think the House of Black. I just think people, and Buddy has been in some good singles in the last year or two at AEW. I just think in this setting, it's really going to be to another level because they are in Australia. I would be remiss without saying that I did leave out a homeboy that's headed back home, Kyle Fletcher.
Yeah.
It's got to be super exciting for that guy to be stepping in the ring with Omega and Ospreay, and he's in a tag. I mean, if the in-ring work rate, if you will, for a max special, this is going to be, Conrad, I don't, if in-ring work rate is your cup of tea, this will be the best show of the year for you. No doubt. In my opinion, no doubt. There is not a quote unquote stinker on it at all.
And how about this? It's free on TV this Saturday. Check it out. It's AEW Grand Slam coming to Australia, and you get to watch it on right after the All-Star game. That's what I'm going to be doing at my house. We're going to be watching a little Alabama. We're going to watch the NBA, and we're going to have AEW on. It's going to be a fun time. I hope you check it out. And I hope that you're going to enjoy our topic today, Jeff. Against All Odds 2005.
20 years ago. Jesus.
God, where's the time go? Right?
I don't know, man. I really don't. It's unbelievable. I'm going to sit back here. Go ahead.
Let's talk about where we are. We've got, we got to talk about where the television program is. It's been written here in the Observer. TNA Impact and its premiere showings on Friday have been moved to 4 p.m. and did a 0.19 on January 7th and a 0.27 on the 14th. That's ever so slightly above what the show had been doing at 3 p.m. The reports we got that the Friday 2 a.m. numbers weren't huge don't appear to be the case. The numbers are low enough that they aren't being reported. However, the Saturday night at midnight slot, which I expected to be the strongest slot, did a 0.2. On the 8th, it was already up to a 0.33, which would be the highest rating at a TNA show has done up to that point. This will be an interesting show to track. So Dave is keeping up with as you're moving around the dial a little bit. And let's be clear, we're not talking about great time slots here.
Oh my God.
And I think when people think about TNA, they just always go to, oh, well, they were in prime time and man, they were head to head with Monday Night Raw. And yes, they were eventually. But at this point, Jeff, you know, what's the old saying? Beggars can't be choosers. You're just happy to be on television, right?
And, you know, oh God, Conrad, I mean, let's be clear here. We were not getting paid. We were paying to be on TV. Why do you do that? Well, to build the brand. But Conrad, when I dove into this, and that's why I kind of screamed out 20 years ago, what has happened in the last 20 years? It's just everything happens faster today. But in 2005, our show, and I can remember sitting in the LA offices of Fox Sports and how they were still, you know, less than 10 years old, and FS1 was called Speed, and being migrated. I mean, Speed, you know, Speed became FS2. Just kind of the growth of it all. It was just, it's not anywhere close to what people would think about Fox Sports is today, because Fox Sports was a big group of regional networks. And, you know, when we came on, we landed on Friday at 3 Eastern as our first one, because everybody, and I say everybody, all the regional networks agreed to give us clearance. And that's, you know, Friday nights are not easy. Friday afternoons, my God. And like I said, no Twitter, no Instagram, no Facebook. The online journalism was obviously building, but nothing like all of it was today. And the messaging, just to get the word out, hey, we're moving from 3 Eastern to 4 Eastern. It just, in our limited shoestring budget, Conrad, to me, the numbers that when I look at it today, impressive may be too strong a word. I think but I'm like, okay, that the wrestling, I'm going to give the wrestling fan all the credit, and they deserve all the credit, because they will search out content and watch it. The wrestling fan is like none other. That's where I'm going with the whole FS1 Fox Sports programming numbers that we're going to get into here off the top of the episode. It's kind of mind-boggling how they searched us out and the numbers grew.
I do want to ask you, because I think that some of the things that you did early in TNA should be studied. And one of the things I want to give you credit for, and Dave Meltzer was even giving you credit for, is the strong replay push. You know, it felt like TNA, you got to remember, this is not at this point, it doesn't have all of the wherewithal behind Panda Energy. We're not all in on TNA yet. We're just sort of putting our toe in the water. So there's not a super significant investment. So I do believe that a lot of people who found TNA found it through word of mouth. And so you have a really great pay-per-view. We've talked about the America's Most Wanted and Triple X cage match. But one of the things I wanted to push is you guys did such a great job promoting the replay of that pay-per-view. It might be some of the best marketing I've ever seen for a pay-per-view replay. Now that feels like an old school way of thinking and talking, because we don't really do that now. But once upon a time, and certainly back then, you had the pay-per-view on a Sunday, and then say on WWE, they would show you still images on Monday Night Raw of what happened at the pay-per-view and push the pay-per-view replay that was coming out on Tuesday. Now, of course, we know that's all different and everything's on demand and the world is different and the way we order and consume is totally different. But you guys did a masterful job at making some of these events feel can't miss once they've already happened. Who deserves some of the credit on your end for making that happen?
I mean, all the above, because, oh boy, kind of, I'll tell you a quick story. At Top Guy Weekend, one of the top guys came up to me and said, "Hey man," because we did the watch along with TNA. He says, "Jeff," he said, "I don't think I missed more than 3 or 4 of your Asylum episodes." And he said, "I just got to tell you, I didn't pay for one of them." And I said, "Brother, you are not the only one that did that. It was a different era. I call it today the Apple Wallet generation. It's just the transactions and the way things were done right back then, and the on the cable bills and all that. But the pay-per-view companies, to the talent, to the office, our studio, word of mouth, we'll call it the online buzz, all the above. I think the biggest driver of all of it would be our motivation to create revenue. And I say everyone. I mean, we're going to get into here and talk about later in this episode, Chris Daniels, AJ Styles, America's Most Wanted, guys that had not ever seen, we'll call it big money at the time, and the big WCW or WWF money. And so innately, by osmosis or listening or just being in tune, everybody knew that as a company, we needed to create as much revenue as possible. Later on, that's why one of the reasons live events revenue works so well. We all were rowing in that direction. And so, I said it at the beginning, the pay-per-view companies incentivize us to do that by saying, "Hey, push it, and we're going to do it on our end." But all of us, I mean, collectively, all of us, coming off that Triple X AMW match and Elix walking the top, or whatever match it could have been, when we had something, we put it out there and promote.
I got to ask you about the report from the Observer that says apparently the reaction Jarrett got with the boring and Triple H chants at the taping last week, which seemed to unnerve him, was the wake-up call to everyone of what has been obvious for some time. I can't imagine them putting the title on Nash just because putting him in a title match alone may be a decision regretted. It's clear Dusty Rhodes has the mentality of guys who can draw being guys with track records. So logic then says if Jarrett loses, DDP, who Rhodes has been friends with dating back to Florida Championship Wrestling, is the logical successor. So here's what I want to ask you, Jeff. We've talked about this before because the knock on you and the narrative from all the Jeff Jarrett haters out there has been, oh, he had to develop his own company to make himself champion. That's just silly. It doesn't make any sense. All you have to do is take a look back at the AWA and ask yourself, why did Vern Gagne make Larry Zbyszko the champion? Well, because it was a son-in-law. He's not going anywhere. And if you're not in a place in your company where you can offer guaranteed contracts and big monies to really lock somebody up, you're susceptible to WWE literally plucking whoever they want, but they couldn't pluck you because it's your company. So you're going to be there. So that made all the sense in the world to me. Of course, some of our listener base, they don't want to hear that. It's got to be something else. You just really wanted to be champion, whatever. But I do want to ask you, is there a line between when the fans really don't like him, he's a heel, he's doing his job, versus, no, he's a guy we don't want to see? And I know that me and you have always come to the conclusion on this program, hey, if they're booing and he's a heel, that's kind of the idea. But is there a fine line where it's like, hey, this is go away heat now? Do you think your character got to that place, or have you ever seen it? Or is that just a construct that exists online and it's not real?
It puzzled me, and I kind of chuckled, and I don't want to get too far ahead in the notes here, but out of the same paragraph, or essentially the same breath, Meltzer was saying the go away heat, but man, their buys are better for the second pay-per-view than the first show, and the third one is tracking to be good. And now Orlando, they're turning fans away, and you're going to hear in the notes, it's gotten to the point that people are really upset that they didn't get to see it. And Jarrett Nash, they had to fight outside just to give the people who've been standing out there 3 and 4 hours to get in. And I mean, Conrad, the basis of this whole podcast, in a lot of ways, you didn't like me and you didn't like this, and others to this day, like, man, until you did that podcast, I really hated you. And to this day, Bischoff, hated my outfits. You know, the one style of outfit, and just, I mean, we could go on and on and on about the emotion that I believe I have conjured up through the years. And when you really look at the history of the NWA championship here, Conrad, you know, me and AJ Styles traded the belts. Me and Ron the Truth Killing traded the belts. Who else can you want to put in there? Rhino, Christian, Raven. There's several in there. And then when we signed Kurt, I stepped away, and those are not hypotheticals. That's the history. That's the facts of it. In this era, Conrad, and Dusty coming in, and I'll call it the backstage politics and the dynamics and everything that went with it. The people in the Impact Zone were, and I say this with a complete respect, they were diehard fans that would sit out in the sun and wait to get in, but they were the truly beginning of the smart mark, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so when they're chirping and all of that, it's it's kind of the nature of the you know, years ago, this is awesome. And, you know, back in the day, I hated that, because it's like, okay, or no, yeah, this is because, okay, you're kind of applauding that it's a performance as opposed to emotional match. Okay, times change. You got to evolve with the times and all that. But Conrad, the quote unquote go away heat, I believe the sound of go away heat is silence.
Yes. Well said. Thank you for dropping the knowledge on us, because all the business metric points to, hey, it's working. But when you do have this vocal majority, because that's what I'll call it online, but that, by the way, has existed not just for you. It wasn't that long ago. It existed for Roman Reigns. Go ahead.
Yeah, and like you could go through multiple folks, I believe, that when you have a mainstay, if you will,
yes,
I think that's the easiest way to say it, is that kind of
is overexposure the right word?
Well, no, here's where I'm kind of going with it. The people that are, and here's why I truly want to defend them. Those folks that never miss and that are at every taping and are not going to miss it. And I can hear a bunch of different voices in my head that I respect a lot through the years. Those people that are there, and these are the key words, every week.
Yes.
Are you really promoting to them? Because we know we want people.
They're there every week. Yeah.
We want the people that may be on the fence or on the fringe in the build. And the facts really speak for themselves. We're talking about 05 here. In 06, I thought there was a much bigger, and I think to this day, the hell, MJF is still a mark, because he'll still reference it from time to time. Oh, Jeff, you made the champion I mean, you made the company, you know, so you could be champion. I just, okay, chuckle and all that. But there is a segment or people out there that believe that. But when you look at me holding on to the title, and people were pissed off when finally it was my title against Sting's career, it did, again, it set a record for pay-per-view buys, not dollar figures, because we went up in price and HD and all that, and later the dollars, but it was, you know, right up there. That's why it's a chuckle, but the barometer is the best you can get is your number and your metrics. Because if you go on all that crowd reaction, they were saying go away heat. Well, at least they're talking. You know, going back to silence is truly the response to go away heat.
Well, we're not going to be silent anymore about Factor. Are you ready to optimize your nutrition this year? Factor has chef-made gourmet meals that make eating well easy. They're dietitian approved and ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes. So you can fuel right and feel great no matter what life throws at you. Factor arrives fresh and fully prepared, perfect for any active, busy lifestyle. You can even lose up to 8 pounds in 8 weeks with Factor Keto meals. That's based on randomized controlled clinical trials with Factor Keto. Of course, your results will vary based on your diet and exercise. But with 40 options across 8 different dietary preferences on the menu each week, it really is easy to pick meals tailored for your goals. You can choose from preferences like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto. Factor can help you feel your best all day long with wholesome smoothies, breakfast, grab and go snacks, and more. So reach your goals this year with ingredients you can trust and convenience that can't be beat. Man, I had some last week. I had 2 Factor meals last week that just hit the spot. I can't recommend this enough. I encourage you to try it. I'll just be honest. Jeff and I have had several different meal delivery sponsors here. Factor is the only one that Jeff and I keep subscribing to, even when they're not advertising. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/myworld50off. That's code myworld50off, and you'll get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code myworld50off at factormeals.com/myworld50off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box.
Connie, Factor is everywhere. I saw it. Did you hear it? Oh, no, I was in the car driving back from a ball game. Radio ads within Super Bowl. Factor, we've been with them kind of in the early days, buddy. Factor's hit mainstream, and there's a big reason why. It definitely feeds the last outlaw house.
Check it out, factormeals.com/myworld50off. Use that promo code myworld50off. You're going to love it. The Observer is saying Sting has been negative when it comes to returning. I believe they tried to get him for the first 2 Sunday pay-per-view shows. The feeling is, and Sting has pretty much said this, he did some shows early on because he felt he owed it to Jarrett for booking him and Jim Hellwig to start their careers when no other promotion would even return their inquiries. He's done enough matches for Jarrett that he considers in his own mind that he's paid back that debt. What ultimately got Sting to change his mind? Some of that sweet, sweet TNA money from Spike, or what is it?
You know what? When I read this, I had to, how do I say this? Maybe not channel my inner Eric Bischoff, shout out Easy E, because there's no doubt in my mind that Dave just wanted to write sensational stuff because, and look, when we got Sting back the first go around, when he came back, Spike didn't contribute $1. It was all dollars and cents. And you got to remember, we're paying to be on Spike right now. It just wasn't in the business plan. It had nothing to do with, I've already paid the debt back to Jarrett or whatever it may be. It was all about dollars and cents, period.
Well, that's not surprising. It's also not surprising to hear that Dusty Rhodes' influence is helping the pay-per-views. One of the things that Dave is talking about in The Observer is a strategy that maybe you disagreed with Dusty on. Dave would write that Dusty would give these pregame football coach type speeches to the crew, basically saying, hey man, we need producers. And if you guys can't get out there and put on the show and work your ass off and steal the show, there's 100 other guys who look just like you who will. So I need some production. I need you to go out there and steal the show. And Dave would say that you weren't really so sure about giving that type of speech, thinking it might be perceived as negative and might get some of the talent down. But Dave would say, but instead, the opposite has happened. So I guess it's working based on what Dave thinks. Was there a difference of opinion? Do you remember him trying to do a fire and brimstone type speech and you thinking, man, that's a little heavy handed. I wouldn't do it that way. Is that real?
I'm curious. Well, to this day, I'm not a believer in group speeches, whether they're rah-rah or informational or maybe laying the law down or anything in between. I was a big believer, and me and my dad, a couple of times in year 1 and 2, he would ask me, hey, you want to get everybody together? Because I guess on occasion he had done that in Memphis a couple of times. And maybe it's just my philosophy or psychology or, again, during this time, I'm, how old am I here? Mid-30s. And so a lot of the guys I was working with were at least my age or close in my age. Yes, I was, one of the older guys when you look at the real young guys. But Conrad, I'm just a big believer in let me find the right opportunity during the day, especially on pay-per-view Sundays, that I would go up to a match that was maybe going over their match or an individual or whatever the right time, or if I see somebody when they're right, get to the building. I made it a point to give my and I'm just and maybe because I could always see through it, I'm not a big rah, hey, all that. I just think that usually is not the best motivator in a way. I do want people to bring energy to the table, but I like to I would always like to try to give different guys, I don't say challenges, but try to talk level-headed to them and say, hey, man, you've got a real opportunity tonight. Or if I knew that, hey, tonight you're going to be following AJ Styles, so you're going to have a real challenge out there. Tell me what you're doing up front of your match, because at the end of the day, I want to help you. I think you're going to have to go through a little pain to let the people settle back down, and then you're going to have the right hot spot to suck them back in. So psychology-wise, Dusty, again, he was a generation up. He had much more credibility. I'll give it credibility because he had been around the horn multiple times. And if he wanted to do that style, I wasn't against it for Dusty to do it, but I certainly wasn't going to be. And that was what I tried to convey to my old man. I said, Dad, you do, that's you. It ain't me. I don't want to do it that way. So for me, it didn't work, or I never subscribed to that fact. But for Dusty, I think you can get it. But I know the boys, they can hear one little thing interpreted wrong. And when the meeting's over, and Conrad, you can probably relate to this, the 20 to 30 minutes after those meetings would take place, that is the opportunity for whatever talent that may be there. You're never going to make everybody happy, and maybe that day they're having to take the fall. But when you have the 20 to 30 minutes after it, and if Dusty or whoever's leading the meeting says something wrong, then all of a sudden that talent is going to have that opportunity to kind of hold court and have.
It's called a parking lot meeting in sales, Jeff.
Oh, is it really?
It's called a parking lot meeting. Like, you have the big sales meeting, and then the guys who are negative, the lower producers, the guys who are, having problems at home and, can't close a window. They have what's called a parking lot meeting. Oh, that ain't right. Here's what they're really going to do next, blah, 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 just to undermine everything that happened in the first meeting. I was going to ask you, I believe that you're probably, what's that?
I love it. I've learned a new sales
parking lot meeting. There you go. But I'm of the opinion, I don't disagree with you. I do think sometimes you do need a group meeting, but I never liked being talked at. And I feel like you're probably like me in that. If I'm going to be communicated information, I would like for it to be communicated interpersonally, one-on-one,
right,
as opposed to, hey, I'm just going to give you the information and y'all are all beneath me, so go rank and file and process it. That doesn't make me feel like a valued team member. So a one-on-one is the way that I would respond best to. And I feel like you're probably the same, right?
Without question. And it's that because, the rah-rah speech that Dusty or whoever is, hey, man, let's go seize the moment. Let's go do the very best you can. Well, the opening match and the main event match and the one following the crazy high spot match in the middle of it, everybody has a different role to play.
Yeah.
Phil Jackson, I'll go in a rabbit hole, but Phil Jackson won all those championships. When you hear him break down how he dealt with different talent, man, you talk about a masterclass in psychology on it's insanity to even begin to think you can treat everybody the same. It's just not real. So I kind of took those things to heart and had that. Dusty, again, coming from a different generation.
Yes.
Maybe it worked better, quote unquote, back in the day, or he did what he thought's best. But you said it, Conrad, not to be talked at.
I do want to ask you about something that happened that you and I have never talked about. It's in the Observer that you were doing a television taping for the WB network in Atlanta. This was at the old Center Stage Theater. It was a program called Blue Collar TV. And somehow, some way, you wind up taking a guitar shot and a splinter goes into your eye and you go to the hospital. Talk to me about this. We've never discussed this before.
It was, knock on wood, the one and only time. Conrad, I can remember it like it was yesterday. They had the guitar. They were, my guitars that I brought on set. So nothing unusual or anything like that. I swung it, and I think because I don't know, but I looked at it different, but I saw the splinter and the explosion coming back at me, Conrad, and boom, it went right in that eye. And it was a little bit of a scary moment. It was, and thank God it was at the end of the night. The shoot, that was kind of like the last shot that we were doing and all that. And they put me in the car. We were real close to Emory University Hospital and got down there, and the doc, emergency room doc, I think they called in a specialist just to make sure, let's take a good look, and looked at the eye and everything, and just a real healthy scratch. Fortunately, nothing permanent, obviously, and nothing too crazy, but it did go in the eye and scratch it up pretty good. But, no loss of eyesight, permanent, none of that. But it was nasty. Wore the patch, I think, for a day. Because it wasn't one of those things. But yeah, that's where I got to meet old Larry the Cable Guy, Bill Engvall. That show, Blue Collar Comedy, it was a lot of fun on set. And you can imagine with JB and Don West and the crew we had, and y'all
didn't drink any beer, did you?
Oh, buddy.
Bet you didn't. Hey, I want to ask you about Dusty Rhodes. There's a report in the Observer that he wants to give someone named Ryan Wilson the Goldberg push. And I had to put it in my Google machine and say, what the fuck is a Ryan Wilson? It's Triton. Okay, I remember him. It was a cup of coffee. It didn't last very long. I think there's only like 7 matches. Why didn't Triton work out? Do you even remember that guy?
Oh, for sure I do. There's only one Goldberg. I think there's several set of circumstances. And I'm just going to say this, and let's move on. Ryan was his own worst enemy.
You don't want to say anything else.
He had some trouble.
Okay. All right. I got you. You're trying to be respectful. We'll move it along.
Yep.
I do want to ask you about Shocker, because it's written in the Observer that, hey, Dusty really wanted to push Hector Garza, but we know, well, he ain't never coming back. We've talked about that in the archives available at myworldpod.com. But he keeps watching sports TV, and they keep running a McDonald's commercial that features Shocker. Now, some of you who grew up as American wrestling fans may not even remember that name, but he is quite a star, and now he wants to bring him into TNA and give him a mega push because he thinks, hey, this kid's on national TV. We got something here. Shocker is another blast from the past. I think a lot of people assumed this guy was going to be a much bigger star than he wound up becoming. And you mentioned some troubles. I remember there being all kinds of crazy stuff about he's running around naked, getting arrested in Mexico, and just some crazy stories through the years. What can you tell us about the Shocker experiment, and why did Dusty love him so much?
So you've already gave the kind of the end result, if you will, that his demons certainly got the best of him during his peak years. But Conrad, it's hard to put into words that I believe the potential this guy had. Bilingual, California boy guy that was
speaks perfect English.
I was going to say, and Spanish. So
yeah.
a true bilingual talent that had a ton of just natural charisma. And I think you kind of glossed over what kind of how he got on Dusty's radar. But you got to say, is there a bigger advertiser in the food and beverage?
It's McDonald's and Coca-Cola.
Right. I mean, seriously, Conrad. I mean, they are millions upon millions. And Shocker was in a nationwide Mickey D's commercial.
Probably more than nationwide. I mean, it's probably North America, Latin America. I mean,
Huge. But
yes.
when Dusty kind of drilled down and kind of learned, I'm sure today probably gave him a tutorial. This guy was the biggest box office attraction in CMLL.
Yes.
You just go, like, how did this guy, no disrespect to TNA, how did he not come on, in our world and get whatever run that would be, and then get on to the WWE? Because he could work, bilingual, ton of charisma. I mean, just there isn't a box he didn't check. I mean, when McDonald's features you in a commercial, you're doing something right. I mean, they don't put folks in commercials unless they focus group test and pass with more than flying colors. It's kind of amazing, Shocker's entire story, but he is a huge what if for me to the entire wrestling industry.
No doubt. I totally agree because of the opportunity. I mean, you got to remember in 2005, WWE was programming SmackDown to be like their Latin channel. I mean, they were looking for their next big Latin superstar, and that's when they're going to start pushing Ray. Go ahead.
When did Ray?
Right here.
This is when he started.
When Eddie passed away, they put it on Ray. Like all the focus went on Ray. So when Eddie passes away in November, they have a renewed focus on Rey Mysterio. But this is the era where you see WWE saying, hey, there's money in their heels when it comes to Spanish. And Dusty's just watching football and sees, well, shit, there's a wrestler we can get right now on a McDonald's commercial, and he speaks Spanish and English. This is perfect.
And we had been talking to him off and on. Again, Armando Quintera, who did our Spanish feed, in different eras through TNA. It goes without saying. Conan, Mike Tenay always had his pulse on it. There were other folks that, this is AAA days with the Ultimate X Cup and all that. So Shocker, when he was on again, off again on that radar, and then that commercial comes out and you hit it. Dusty was like, what? We can get this guy? Let's go.
I do want to ask you a little bit about Dusty Rhodes again, because something that Dave wrote here, I thought was a light bulb moment for me in our research. Because Dusty Rhodes, I think everybody listening to this knows, was one of the greatest attractions of all time. I mean, I've heard a lot of people say pre-Hulk Hogan, nobody sold more tickets in the world than Dusty Rhodes. When it came to being a draw in America, certainly, Dusty Rhodes was number one, and it wasn't even all that close. Of course, Hulk Hogan changed all that with Vince McMahon going into his national expansion or even global expansion. Well, but Dusty Rhodes was the high watermark. Go ahead.
I'm going to use your footnote. Who was Vince's first choice or thought
Dusty.
about it? Dusty. And look, I don't have to tell you that, Jerry Lawler talked a lot of folks into the building with his mouth.
Yes.
Dusty, a lot of people in the building with his mouth. You can kind of go across territory by territory by territory. But at the very top, you'd have to, just because Dusty worked in the bigger territories, Dusty's at the top.
Here's where I was getting with that. If you go back and you watch Jim Crockett television, the TBS show, the studio show that went coast to coast and helped put Jim Crockett Promotions on the map and made them a major player and real competition for Vince McMahon.
605.
When you take a look at that show, that audience, even though Dusty is the number one babyface, that studio audience, a good portion of them fucking hated Dusty. They cheered the Horseman. They cheered Ric Flair. And they booed Dusty like nobody's business. Even though Dusty was the guy selling the tickets, he was the babyface. So I'm saying all of that to say when Dave wrote this, it was a light bulb moment for me. Dusty on the February 11th show did the gimmick where both Nash and Jarrett were banned from the building. If you notice, he kept Jarrett from being in front of the people at both tapings. This is from Dusty's own experience. In the 80s, the Atlanta fans who went to the old studio tapings hated Dusty, largely because they loved Flair and the two were always feuding. At the house shows, there were even some markets where Rhodes would be cheered, but most markets were split, at least in 85, 86. And Rhodes versus Flair was usually a great business match. But it looked bad when Rhodes, who was pushed on TV as the top face in the universe, would be booed so horribly. So Rhodes just stopped going in front of the people and would do his interviews via satellite or backstage. So they taped the deal via satellite, claiming Jarrett was in Nashville and Nash was in Hollywood, I guess trying to act like Nash was a big movie star. I think that's a stroke of genius. And who would have ever thought that you as a heel and Dusty as a babyface had anything in common? But if there's pushback from the fans, that's it. That commonality never really clicked for me that, hey, the fans in the studio for whatever reason aren't digging it. But all the other metrics support that this is the right way to do business. Like, buys are there, ticket sales are there, ratings are there. And that's the story of TNA here. But with this subset of fans that come to the tapings, they don't like it. We can't let that small group of fans dictate our business for every other angle, every other aspect. I thought that was genius. And that Dusty could pull that from his own experience, that never really clicked for me until we were doing research for this show.
How about that? When I looked at it and tried to conjure up the different memories, I know there was a couple of times, I'm not saying on this episode, we did a press conference one time. There were certain things that just out of time that we would kind of make suggestions. And I'm not saying just me, kind of collectively, like, hey, this may be better off. Let's do this where we can control the time and prepackage it. And Jeff doesn't have to get long, or Kevin doesn't have to get long, or whatever it may be, and leave the wrestling content. And also when you're taping a couple episodes, if that was the situation. Anyway, to this day, Conrad, though, the manipulation, if you will, there's all kinds of legendary stories through the years that, Vince would sweeten the audio on this and add the boos here and add the cheers here and put this stuff out and have them redo a finish to make it look different. All this, it's done, but on this set of circumstances, I didn't know until I read the research that WP. Now this is early 80s that Dusty and Flair had the same issues going way, and I know I've heard my dad talk about, when Lawler turned babyface, there was a section of people that absolutely could not get over his past. And no matter how big of an ass kicking babyface, there's some folks in the audience that still hated his ass. Anyway, the wrestling fan, but pretty cool. The dream, we all pull stuff from our experiences, but did you know that he got booed that much in the studio?
Oh, I was watching it. Yeah. Not at the time, but as an adult, I've gone back and watched it, and I never really drew the correlation between you and him. But when I read that in the Observer, it was like, oh yeah, shit, that is exactly what Dusty dealt with.
Yeah.
And I could only think, if Dusty thought like I did, man, I wonder if he ever kicked back with some Vea and didn't worry about it anymore. New year, new you. That's what we're all saying for 2025. It's a brand new year full of new possibilities. Don't let those bad times of 2024 bring you down. Reach new heights this year with Vea. Trusted by over 500,000 happy customers, Vea is like the Swiss Army knife of wellness. It's dedicated to harnessing the natural benefits of hemp to create high-quality wellness products. Whether you're looking to improve your sleep, your focus, your recovery, maybe just add a little pep to your step, or maybe you just want to get high, Vea has something for you with products ranging from 0 to 100 milligrams of THC. Vea gives you the power to blaze your own trail. Vea is well renowned for their award-winning THC and THC-free gummies. They got vapes, they got flower, they got soothing topicals, they've even got calming drops. It's all crafted with the highest quality hemp sourced from trusted, independent, American-owned farms. And the best part is Vea legally ships to nearly every state in the United States, all in discreet packaging directly to your door with a worry-free guarantee. And there's no medical card required. So if you're 21 or over, check out the link to our to Vea's website. It's a link in our description today. And we're going to give you the promo code MyWorld. You'll get 15% off. And by the way, if you're new to Vea, you even get a free gift of your choice. I'm a big believer in this. I have to explain. I'm a novice. I was not familiar with this. I've always been a fraidy cat here in North Alabama. But once I got the welcome package, man, they made it so easy to understand. I could really see just based on the packaging, they got something for everybody. You need help getting to sleep? This is the one for you. You need help focusing at work? This is the one for you. Hey, are the kids off to bed and you're ready to chill out? Well, this is the one for you. Unlock the power of nature with Vea's organic and vegan hemp extracts. It's perfect for relaxation and rejuvenation. As far as I know, Vea is the only lifestyle hemp brand. They use compounds found in hemp along with active plant extracts to create products with a specific effect in mind. As I was saying, if you want better sleep or to ease your anxiety or just enhance your mood, they've got something for you. And by the way, if you're a novice like I am, you can get a 0 milligram THC product here. Now, if you're a pro, you can get up to 100 milligrams of THC. But man, I decided I wanted to crawl before I walked. I started with 0 and eased in. My wife is still rocking the 0. Nothing wrong with that. Vea is well known for their premium THCA flower. It's grown indoors in a state-of-the-art facility. It's harvested at peak THCA levels to emphasize a natural aroma and flavor. And all their different THCA flower strains are grown with care and rigorously tested to ensure the highest quality, free from harsh pesticides or nasty chemicals. More than 500,000 people are already rocking with Vea. It's made right here in the USA. It's farmed and crafted all in the United States. They've got excellent top-notch customer support. It's sourced from the finest hemp, and you're going to have the peace of mind of knowing it's all lab tested and certified. But maybe best of all, and this is a big deal for me, it's premium products that fit your budget. So if you're looking to feel good, but you're looking for a deal, look no further. If you're 21 or over, check out the link to Vea in our description. Use that promo code MyWorld. You'll get 15% off. And if you're new to Vea, you get a free gift of your choice. Now, after you purchase, they're going to ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. This year, enhance your everyday with Vea. Hey, so you're expanding internationally, and I know that's your jam. I know in real life, international expansion is where you see the growth for WWE and all wrestling. But the company in this era signed a deal with RDS, and that's an all sports channel in French. It's going to air in Eastern Canada and in Montreal. You're even starting to get an opportunity with a company called Eurosport, and they're going to give you 2 free specials or two opportunities to do specials. They're also going to have an opportunity to have you show the program in Japan. So it said that, hey, that's doubtful that there's even going to be 1,000 orders in Japan, but hey, every little bit helps. In this era, only like 5,000 pay-per-views are international for WWE, but you definitely had to see, listen, we're chugging along and we're getting on TV, but we're having to pay for that, right? But the real growth opportunity is to take the blinders off and say there's more to life than just North America. What can we get in Canada? What can we get in Japan? That's the real new frontier, right?
It is. And you know, we started, as we know, just I'm giving myself a timeline, June 2002. So now we're not even to June of 2005. And I know our first small, tiny deal was out of India, but just kind of the growth internationally and the momentum, if you will, that we just kept plugging away at it. And none of these were big money deals, but the exposure and look, the content was already being created. And that was the thing that, you know, when you sit down and really look at it and say, all right, we're paying to be on FS1. If we can get a few bucks here and a few bucks there, just to kind of continue to grow that, grow all the revenue streams. Man, that was a strategy then. And I still think to this day, you know, you just, India alone. Well, let's throw in Pakistan. India and Pakistan, just those 2 countries alone have 6 times as many people as the United States. And you go, yeah, but the economies and this and that, and like, yes, but it's slowly coming. You know, it's all eyeballs, impressions, and maybe Conrad, you'll give us a lesson here on sales and impressions. But that's the internet. When you open everything up to internationally, just your potential is so much bigger.
Let's talk a little bit about Johnny Fairplay. There's a note in the Observer that made me laugh out loud. First of all, let me give a shout out to Johnny. He's a friend of the show, a friend of wrestling. He's a super fan. And over the weekend, he finally, for real, lost his grandma. Not just a stunt on Survivor Series.
For real?
Not Survivor Series, but Survivor. But his grandmother finally passed away 20-something years later.
Bless her.
But that, if you're not familiar with Survivor, that was a gimmick he pulled. He claimed that his grandmother had passed away. It was a total lie, but it was a major moment in reality show history. But here's the report from the Observer here 20 years ago. Johnny Fairplay got loaded and was thrown out of a Survivor reunion party this past week. Jeff Probst, who put the show together, said that Fairplay was a great villain on the show and worked well as a TV rival to Rupert, but said after this, he never wants to see him again for the rest of his life. He's probably not the only person with those feelings. I don't know why, but it's funny to see Dave do a write-up like this about a television show. Why did Johnny Fairplay get such heat? Was it intentional? Did he know he was getting heat? Was that the plan? Was it all by design, or does he just rub people the wrong way and doesn't know any better?
Hell yeah, he knew what he was doing. I mean,
Yes.
he's abrasive and likes to have fun and all that, but at the very core, he knew how to needle. And, you know, in a lot of ways, when you kind of, that picture of him, for whatever reason, it just kind of flashed in my head. I want to give Dutch the line. I think it was him, because I think it was Dutch, or he repeated all this, is that in person, when you're around Johnny and he's, you know, playing the role of the heel, he's an irritating little son of a gun. On TV, that didn't always translate for whatever reason. And sometimes that's just kind of the nature of the beast. But, you know, no matter what setting it was, Johnny could push buttons. And I do chuckle with you that Meltzer is, everything's wrestling to him. Probst is the Phil Munchnick, or the Sam Munchnick of the world, that, or the promoter, or the Vern Gagne. Never wants to see him again, ever. Nick Goulas, get out of my territory, boy.
Let's talk about the pay-per-view. We're finally here. This is another pay-per-view under Dusty Rhodes' belt. You may recall from a few episodes ago, he laid it out that, hey, he needs 6 months to turn things around. So this is another one of those pay-per-views. What he's going with in the main event is Jeff Jarrett versus Kevin Nash. Meltzer's skeptical of that, saying, hey, match quality-wise, that's not going to be on the level of some of the other matches that we've seen recently, but it does have more star power. So will it work? Well, we'll see. But here's what is working. 775 people are there. I know what you're thinking. That doesn't sound like a lot. That's capacity of the soundstage, and they're turning away several hundred people, several of which are crying. They're in tears, Jeff, that they can't get in the building. Do you remember hearing this? People crying?
I did it. And, you know, the numbers are give or take. Who really cares? 100, 150 people on that. And I'm just trying to, when we shuffled, because it's all on, you know, the space and the amount of seats we can get in there, and the fire codes would come out, and then you would have different administrators, whether it's from Universal Studios, the fire department, the on staff, just all that. But when we would cram them in there, and then again, for maybe new listeners, when we ran Universal Studios Orlando, we were a park attraction. You could not sell tickets. With that being said, they had to kind of honor the commitments of, or we did, of the lease, but the whole deal structure was, we need to make this a true park attraction, which means that we had to have two lines, two queues. One would be, I'm going to come through City Walk. I don't want to ride any of the rides. I don't want to do any of that. I just want to come watch wrestling. Or you go in the park and you go ride roller coasters or Harry Potter or whatever it may be, and then you go stand in line and you get to come in and watch wrestling just like you would on any other ride. Well, we had to service the amount of people in the park. There was a certain section, and so we had to play the ebb and flow of, you had to let both lines in, and when you got to capacity, you had to say no. And there were people that came in the park, I hate to say it, little kids that, hey man, we're full. They didn't like that, mom and dad. And then you have the wrestling fans that got in their car, parked at City Walk, made the trek over there. Oh, nope, we're full. What? They were not happy. So it was a good sign, but man, when you kind of hear that, we would have lots of nights. We would have talent go up and down the line and sign autographs. And then we got to a certain point where we always had pictures. We always wanted to service the folks out there, but Connie, bottom line, that was a great feeling to have when you're turning folks away.
It's got to be a good feeling, especially when, you're fighting for your life here and folks are being turned away at the door, hundreds of them. And some of them are crying because they can't get in. And I know it's a free show, but still, that's not always been the case. So it is a sign that things are going well. But this show is not without controversy. Before we talk about the matches, I do want to talk about the debates that happened leading into the show. One of them is, hey, what should go on last? There was a feeling, a sentiment amongst some folks that Christopher Daniels and AJ Styles for the X Division title, it's an Iron Man match, that should go on last. That is going to be a match that WWE is not going to put on television, that style match here in 2005. So let's really push that. Let's make that the main event. And Dusty, I guess, according to Dave Meltzer, drew a line in the sand and said, there's no way the X Division title goes on after the NWA World title. With the benefit of hindsight, was that the right call? I know why Dusty made that call. He's the NWA champion himself. It is legacy. It is heritage. It is tradition. I get all of that. And from the star power standpoint, you and Kevin Nash are the brand. I mean, you are certainly more identifiable. But if we are really the challenger brand and we're trying to differentiate ourselves as being different than, well, AJ Styles and Christopher Daniels can go steal the show and respectfully do things that maybe Kevin Nash can't do. Was there ever a debate in your mind as to what should close the show? Did Dusty get it right, saying that it should be you and Nash going on last?
A completely subjective answer. It is, there is not a completely 100% right or wrong. And as a talent, I do remember I'd give anything not to go on last and not to have to follow AJ and Chris, just because of the nature that I was well aware that, all right, they're going to do a 30-minute Iron Man, and the first, 8, 10, 12 minutes are going to be AJ's spectacular stuff, and then they're going to get into the meat and potatoes of the story, and then they're going to pull out all the different false finishes, and then they're going to ask for more time. At the end of the day, what I'm trying to say is the people will be completely exhausted after the 30-minute match, and me and Kev are going to go out there and do more for this discussion, maybe more entertainment as opposed to the sport, or be more sports entertainers as opposed to professional wrestlers. And I'm word spitting here, but you know where I'm going with it. But Dusty was in this. I don't think it's, to me, it's not really an old school mentality. It is the mindset of, okay, the NWA title is our prized possession, and that's kind of what the funnel is. And we're going to be having all kind of star power and this and that. And, in everyone's, not everyone's, but in Dusty's mind and creative mind, all right, what are they paying to see? Okay, we're going to go with that as the main event. But as a talent, I'd love to have gone on before AJ.
We got to talk a little bit about some other news and notes, maybe some controversy. We're going to see the debut on this show of Monty Sopp, who we used to know as Billy Gunn. We don't think we're going to be able to call him that here. So on TV, we call him the former Billy Gunn or the New Age Outlaw. Of course, we know there's no way we're going to be able to keep that. But obviously, it's a big deal to have him in the fold. I mean, what a great performer, what a presence, what a great guy to have in the locker room. But Sean Waltman's also here, but boy, just barely. He wrestled the night before, 2 nights prior in Tijuana, and took a bad bump. And the morning of the pay-per-view, he's at the TV hotel in a wheelchair. I mean, this is hurting for certain. Somehow he manages to make it there. It's written in the Observer, you're really high on Waltman. Dusty's not so sold on this, but clearly we're going to go with it. And when you see the state of Waltman, man, he's hurting. He's here, but dude, in a wheelchair? How do you wrap your head around that on the day of the show, Jeff?
Yeah, and see, I don't have any of the recollection for this episode. Apologies of us debating what Billy's name was going to be. Did we not just go with, anyway? That I don't remember any of that discussion, and maybe Dusty and Dixie and Legal maybe had that discussion, and then kid Sean being in a wheelchair. Connie, I can't tell you that I recall that. And look, I was running, obviously, me and Kev working and a lot of other things going on. I just don't remember that coming across my desk.
Well, did it come across your desk that this incident allegedly Jeff Hammond, who is a NASCAR driver, is going to be teaming with BG James, and they're going to get a win over Michael Shane and Frankie Kazarian. Allegedly, Michael Shane and Frankie Kazarian are none too pleased with having to, quote unquote, do the job for a 48-year-old race car announcer. And allegedly, the heat is being put on Shane Douglas for being the one going to the guys and saying, hey, this is bullshit. You're having to put that guy over, to the point that Michael Shane and Frankie Kazarian allegedly complain loudly and often enough that it pisses you off to the point you want to fire Shane Douglas. That's the report that's written in the Observer. What really happened, Jeff?
I don't know. Maybe I was that upset, but if you kind of go back in time, 2005, and I'll be gray around here, but Fox was the network that we were dealing with and trying to get better replays. And I wanted the best damn sports show, best relationship possible. Well, during this time, they spent a boatload of money on two properties, the NFL and NASCAR. NASCAR, not cable, but network every Sunday afternoon for 38 of 52 weeks. And Jeff Hammond in the late 80s and 90s and whatever year, he was a big crew chief, but then he came on and he was a color commentator. And to tell you that he had stroke and a lot of sway, not just in the NASCAR world, everybody wanted to talk to him because he was the lead analyst. And so the amount of press that he went out of his way, scheduled on his own. Jeff's a fan, good buddy. From time to time, we'll still text each other, but more importantly, when I tell you, we did a deal in Martinsville one time, but when Jeff kind of wrapped his head around, okay, I'm a wrestling fan. He grew up in the Carolinas, spent a lot of time, Flair, everything about Crockett. He loved wrestling, and he had seen the WCW and WWF wars and all that kind of stuff. But when he kind of wrapped his head around, okay, this is a startup alternative brand, my buddy, him, Hermie Sadler, there's multiple folks that went out of their way that would call me and say, hey man, I'm going to do some press here. And they want to talk about wrestling. You cool with it? I'm like, whatever you need, I'll get you on one sheet. So Jeff really dug in and did stuff he didn't have to. And so for him to get to wrestle a match on a pay-per-view was a big bucket list item. And when you look at who we paired him with, by design, BG James can talk and work and kind of carry the load on that side. And by design, his opponents are two guys that I not just trusted, knew that they knew exactly how to get the job done. It just blew my mind that we were in 2005 having an issue with a guy that could do things from a publicity point of view that nobody on the roster could come close. That guy had national and international TV time every Sunday for 30 out of 52 weeks. And again, he could pick up the phone and get on any kind of sports press, not just NASCAR. He talked to all kinds of folks about TNA. So when you had an issue doing business with him, yes, it ruffled my feathers.
I don't know why, but that tickles me because listen, if we know that this guy has some buzz and is going to get you guys a mention in the USA Today, and apparently he's, boys with the president of Fox Sports Net,
all of them.
I would think that guys would be lining up to work with him and put him over. But man, respectfully, wrestler brain.
But think about how things, that's the cool thing I think about our industry, how things, again, we've talked on this podcast, wrestling used to try to dip in and out of pop culture, going back to Mike Tyson at Mania and DX and Shawn and all that. And we could give all kinds of examples of WrestleMania 1, 2, and 3 and Starcades and all that, how you would have celebrity involvement and back, celebrity involvement back. Now, I don't have to tell you, wrestling is pop culture across the board, but it came from little bits and pieces of things like this, celebrity engagement. So I don't think you'd have that same argument today in 2025 that you had in 2005 from the talent, because now it's okay. I'm kind of born and raised through this.
Well, I'll tell you something else that's in fashion these days. Getting your ding dong real hard with Blue Chew. Man, it's going to get you so hard even a cat couldn't scratch it. That's what Jeff was telling me over the weekend. He said that old Patrick Mahomes may have been upset with Taylor Swift, but he just had stroke after stroke last night. It was a high fives all around Hendersonville last night, thanks to Blue Chew. Blue Chew's the original brand offering chewable tablets. These are erection enhancing tablets that will help men achieve stronger, harder, and longer lasting erections for sexual activities. And Blue Chew's putting their money where their mouth is, and they're offering you a free month, boys and girls. The process is simple. You just go sign up at bluechew.com. You consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you get your prescription within a few days. Blue Chew's tablets are made right here in the USA. They're prepared and shipped directly to your door, and you can take them anytime, day or night. So plan ahead or be ready whenever an opportunity arises. And the best part is it's all done online. That means no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversation, and no waiting in line at the pharmacy. So make your life easier by getting harder and discover your options at bluechew.com. And we've got a special deal for our listeners. Try Blue Chew free. That's right. Try your first month of Blue Chew free. Just visit bluechew.com for more details and important safety information. And we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring today's podcast and Jeff's Wiener. Let's talk about the matches here. We're finally here against all odds.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Tell us about your erection. I want to hear all about it.
It's the old Mick Foley person. Didn't he coin the phrase "hot tag for your wiener"?
Well, I did, but whatever. Hey, Elix Skipper is going to be wrestling Petey Williams. Think about that. I would love to see that match today, and you had it 20 years ago. They go nearly 8 minutes. It starts pretty strong. Meltzer would say it starts to fall apart towards the end. There's a lot of talk. This is on the Observer right up here. There's a lot of talk after the show that this exposed what a lot of people knew, and that's that Elix Skipper is best served as a part of a tag team and how much being with Christopher Daniels had protected him. Now, I won't stand for any Elix Skipper slander on the program, but I will say I do think there's certain guys that I like better as a tag team guy. Do you think Elix Skipper was one of those guys? He would be maybe what we'd call the tag team specialist.
So here's kind of, I think something people glossed over on this. Who, if you're generally pretty nice in real life, not really an asshole, that kind of makes you a better heel. Elix is genuinely a very likable, personable guy.
Yes.
He's not, from his babyface presentation, he was a babyface against Petey and DeMore in the corner. I think if I recall, this was like, no, it don't have a damn thing to do about him being a single wrestler. It has everything to do with, he's kind of cast differently here. I think it's Team Canada. And so you got him as a babyface and just everything that goes with it. And some people are better heels than babyfaces and vice versa. And yes, the legendary Jim White, which was Jerry Lawler's, and I always like to use this example that because I heard it over and over, but I heard it different slants and heard it from my father. I heard it from Fargo. I heard it from Lawler himself, different. And they would kind of give just not just examples, but like the mannerisms and what it takes to draw money that, you can have bookend tag teams, which there's, Rock and Roll Express, and I know Ricky, did all the stuff, but still Rock and Roll, Fantastics, Road Warriors, all that, where both partners are kind of same. Jim White was a straight-laced, Lawler did all the talking, all the bump taking, did everything, but Lawler was out front as part of the tag team. And I think, yes, Conrad, there are certain talent that are super talented that may not get the credit, but boy, oh boy, they are the straw that stirs the drink. Going to the football analogy, you think Saquon would have had the record year in all of NFL history, playoffs combined, without 5 guys? Collectively, they weigh over 1,700 pounds. And right now, I can't name one offensive lineman. I just heard that stat. So the role playing in wrestling is as real can be.
Match number 2 is Jeff Hammond and BG James beating Michael Shane and Frankie Kazarian. I don't know why, but Meltzer felt the need to say Hammond wasn't over in the least. Process that as God damn it. What are we even doing? This is just silly. At one point, fans were chanting, "We hate NASCAR" at him.
Yeah.
My goodness. I mean, you want to talk about just undermining the progression of your, like, all these fans are lining up because we love TNA, and TNA tries to do one thing to grow. Oh, we hate it all. We hope this. What is wrong with you?
It still happens to this day. And you know what? I think it's so amplified. Boy, we could both go in rabbit holes, is because, and I don't want to call it the vocal minority, but the people that live it, breathe it, eat it, sleep it, day in, day out. It's not just on while the program's on. I'm talking about 24/7, 365. They're the ones, like I said, they're going to be there every week regardless. And you absolutely do need to have your ear to them, but they cannot dictate every decision you make. If that happens, then you're narrowing your customer base. And that's the thing that Dave, okay, he gave, I'm sure, I don't know if it's in the research, did he give it a star rating? I'm sure this match got -4 star ratings.
Star and a quarter.
Okay, star and a quarter. If he was to give each match a rating solely dependent upon the publicity generated, then this match was a 7-star by far, which is, I mean, what are we doing here, Conrad?
I don't even know what we're doing. Next up, we've got Raven and Dustin Rhodes. They go 8 minutes and 20 seconds. Raven and Dustin Rhodes get the same star rating that Jeff Hammond and BG James did, star and a quarter. 8 minutes and 20 seconds. We see Dustin here doing his work 20 years ago, and I would argue that somehow Dustin is better now 20 years later. Did you and him make a deal with the devil? How is this possible, Jeff?
I'm telling you, easy. Dustin referenced this match not long ago to me. Which I didn't recall that my old man was upset and kind of laid into Raven over, I guess, whatever went down on that. But look, Dustin this past week, and not just this past week, multiple times has gone public that he was in a deep, dark place during this time. I had at the time, I'll say at the time, Conrad, I had no idea that Dustin was in such a bad spot mentally and emotionally and spiritually. I just had no clue. I thought Dustin was just, okay, man, he's not into it as much and whatever it may be. But you talk about the words he said. I faced the devil and I spit in his face and kicked him in his balls, and I rose up from the ashes. Conrad, he ain't just better. He's he's freaking awesome. It's going to be, I can't wait to see him this week. But this wasn't a pretty sight on any stretch, Raven included, Dustin included. It was a star and a quarter at best.
By the way, it's written here, it was so bad that when Raven came to the back, Jarrett jumped him and started screaming at him for ruining the show.
Something went south. Yep. Something went south.
Something's not going south for Dustin these days, though. Tomorrow night, he's going to kick the shit out of that nothing happening pussy MJF all over Austin, Texas. Go get your tickets right now, AEWTIX.com. And I can't believe this is a real thing, but as you're listening to this on Tuesday, today, Dustin Rhodes has a dog in the Westminster Dog Show in Madison Square Garden. Can you believe that's a real sentence?
And do you know what kind of dog this is?
It is a dog that weighs more than you.
Yes,
the dog's name is Beast. It's huge. It's like nearly 300 pounds.
Ain't no
and this dog has a full-time handler, like a 6-figure handler, Like this, Dustin might make Westminster history. Dustin's got a dog working Madison Square Garden this week.
Is that not beautiful?
How crazy is it that his dog is in MSG on Tuesday and he's going to kick the shit out of MJF live on TBS the next day? This is crazy.
I love it. I love it.
What a story he's got.
What a life we live, right, Connie? I mean,
It's absurd. It makes no sense. They're going to plug the latest Ryan Wilson video. Of course, they're plugging Triton here. He's going to be dressed up as a 7-foot Green Lantern. That's the way Dave Meltzer describes it. Next up, we've got Chris Harris and James Storm teaming up to retain the TNA NWA tag team titles from Kid Cash and Lance Hoyt. 3.5 stars. A really, really great match. I don't think these four are capable of having a bad match. It is ironic to think 20 years later, Lance Hoyt's still on TV. Of course, we know him as Lance Archer these days. I don't know that I would have predicted when we were watching this 20 years ago that Lance Hoyt would be the guy 20 years later still on top doing his thing.
And damn sure old Rudy Charles, as those just come across our YouTube feed. I loved Cash and Hoyt for all the right reasons. They were, again, not bookend. Cash and his personality and Hoyt ass-kicking personality, but super athletic. I thought they always made a really good team. And, of course, Chris and James, their chemistry as a tag team, they tore the house down here. Really, really good match.
Next up is a crazy match, one that we could probably go way down the rabbit hole. I don't know how much time you want to spend on this, but Abyss is going to beat Jeff Hardy in what Dave Meltzer calls a comedy of errors filled Full Metal Mayhem match. It goes 15 minutes and 21 seconds. The gist is there's 2 envelopes held high above the ring that you need a ladder in order to get to. One envelope is empty. There's a joke there, but I'll keep it going. The other has a contract for a title shot, and whoever wins this Jeff Jarrett, Kevin Nash collision course main event. And that's going to happen on Impact over the next few weeks. So it's really a TLC style match. And there's going to be a bunch of spots, as you may imagine, like Jeff Hardy climbing to the top of the entrance. Don West is going to say, it must be 40 foot high. Eventually, Jeff's going to get on a 12-foot ladder and he's going to get the contract, but that's not supposed to happen. It's written here in the Observer. He was supposed to get the envelope without the contract. Abyss knew it and was going crazy, but he couldn't stop him because he had to sell the blow. The ref was screaming at Hardy to go for the other envelope, but when he got it, they sold it like it was empty and just kept the match going. But in the panic, the match fell apart at that point. The big spot in the match was they were supposed to both climb the ladder, both grab the envelope, fight over it, tip the ladder over, and go flying through 4 setup tables. Unfortunately, because they had to pretend the new envelope had the contract, it was too far away to take that bump. So instead, Abyss threw Hardy over the top rope, and he was supposed to go through all 4 tables, but the tables didn't break. And Hardy, rather than sell, which should have been a debilitating injury, got right up and went into a temper tantrum. He started kicking and stomping the tables that didn't break. Worse, as he was attacking the tables that he was supposed to be selling from, the cameras are on him the whole time. And while this is going on, Abyss has nothing to do but climb up and grab the empty envelope, which is supposed to be the envelope with the contract, and he's ruled the winner. Obviously, both Hardy and Abyss were furious backstage after the match. This just feels like a Murphy's Law match. Maybe that's what we should have called it. What do you remember of this?
I didn't see any of the post-match meltdown because me and Kevin had our match coming up and I was dialed into that. And, you know, Dusty was running the show anyhow backstage. I found out later this night. And I think there was a lot of the discussion of, hey man, it wasn't as bad as you thought. And Abyss, to his credit, man, he takes so much pride in telling stories in his match. And Jeff is, you know, a perfect babyface opponent for Monster Abyss. And look, you know, Meltzer kind of took a shot at how high that was, but Hardy getting up on top of that. I mean, they did some crazy ass shit and layered it up. And so they were both frustrated, and Jeff was frustrated that he did the wrong thing and Abyss and all that. But I found out after the fact, and look, it's go back and watch it. And yes, it's not picture perfect, but it's not near as big as this sounds like in Meltzer's reporting.
We're not done. We've still got a couple matches to go here. DDP is going to be teaming with Monty Brown. It's a name we hadn't talked about in a little while.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to pick up a win over Eric Young and Bobby Roode. It gets 3 stars. I guess the idea here is we know Monty Brown's going to be a big star. Let's use DDP to sort of give him the rub a little bit. Is that the idea?
Yeah. And at the end of the day, when you put this match on paper, it just solidifies where Dusty was kind of in his mind. Let's keep on keeping on with this guy, because what better heels for Monty to really look like a world beater than Bobby and Eric? I mean, they had tore the house down the week or the month before, I think it was, with AMW. Demore outside, they were a fantastic unit. And so it was in a Monty Brown get over spot, and that was by design across the board.
Next up is the match that you got to go out of your way to see. You know, every now and again we'll say, hey man, go find this one. Go out of your way to see it. This is another one of those. Surprise, surprise. Christopher Daniels is in it. I think he's maybe got to be one of the unsung heroes of TNA. Everybody always gives credit to his opponent, AJ Styles, but man, the common factor in a lot of those early great TNA moments is Christopher Daniels. They steal the show here. It's a 30-minute Iron Man match that goes overtime. They go 31-37. AJ retains, and there's nothing we can say about it other than it was fantastic. In fact, Meltzer even said both men were fantastic out there. Daniels was clearly the ring general and was aggressive from start to finish and never tired. Later, he would write, the timing was almost identical to the Hart Michaels WrestleMania match, and there was a huge standing ovation that lasted several minutes. And this was not somewhat of a contrived one like the ones for Benoit and the Angle and Lesnar matches that lasted far longer. Ultimate X last month was more spectacular, but this was the best match I've seen so far this year, says Dave Meltzer. He gave it 4 3/4 stars. I don't know how this isn't a 5-star match. Meltzer was stingy giving those away sometimes. He would later this year, but this is as close as anybody in America had been in a long, long time. About as good of a match as you can see. And what's interesting is usually folks don't really like the Iron Man stipulation. Maybe it's the type of match you put inside that stipulation, though. These guys stole the show. And I know you said you're trying to get in your head and get your mind right for your main event. But with the benefit of hindsight, man, this is the last match I'd want going on right before me and Kevin Nash. Good Lord.
Yes. And when I look at those images and photos and going in post-production and seeing this, and that night hearing the crowd popping and knowing, all right, Kev, we're going to, we knew we had our work cut out. And that's the responsibility. If you're going to go on last, you've got to put that up on your shoulders and be prepared for it. But man, when we did Top Guy Weekend and me and you were talking about Jerry Lynn, and I said those things like the real glue of the X division. Well, during this era and for quite a while, Chris was the glue. You think about taking a Jerry Lynn, a Christopher Daniels out of AJ Styles' early days. I'm not sure you have the same career. And Chris knows that. AJ knows that. It's just kind of the nature of the beast and the development and everything. When I looked at the studio and I was thinking 775, where did Dave get that? Well, that was when we had a tunnel on each end of the building, the north and the south of it. So it would come down, and you look at the people in those images, Conrad, as we were doing the feed and watching the AJ Daniels match. It was one of those things that the people stood on their feet for most of the match, just engaged in it. And that's where, you have those, not just moments, but kind of thoughts on, are the people really engaged in this? Are they really enjoying themselves? And you watch Bobby Roode and Eric Young bump all over the place, or, he wants to rain on Jeff Hammond. They're not by design going to be on their feet, but they came up when it mattered. But yeah, we've given Mr. Daniels his flowers multiple times on this show, but this is the kind of match, again, we're talking 20 years ago, '05, when a young AJ Styles is just really developing into that main event slot. Hats off to Chris for getting him a big part of getting him ready for that.
The main event is here. It's Jeff Jarrett and Kevin Nash, and man, they're going to have the fans on their feet by the end. I know maybe people don't want to see this last. They don't want to see Jeff Jarrett, blah, blah, blah. Whatever you want to call it, the fans were in it at the end. The heat was real. They wanted Kevin Nash. We're brawling all over the building. We're brawling outside. We're brawling through catering. We got Billy Gunn coming in. We got BG James running in. We got the former X-Pac here. There's blood. I mean, there's something for everybody in this one. It's a bit heavy on story. Maybe it's not the same type of match we saw before, but it is different than, and it's big on drama. 2 3/4 stars. What do you know? A low blow, a streak in the pin. That works every time. They go 19 minutes and 45 seconds. I can't believe that you and Kevin went 19 minutes and 45 seconds. That feels like a long time, but if you take a look at the images here, the entire arena was on their feet by the end. Did you feel like you had your work cut out for you when you're walking down the ramp, given what they had just seen? And did you feel relieved when you saw, hey, they got with it by the end?
Well, I mean, we knew. Me and Kev both knew. And, you know, Kevin's haters out there, he's in a single main event. And how old will he be at this stage? You know, he ain't no spring chicken, multiple knee and shoulder and ankle and quad. And
let me mention this. Dave says Nash can't move because of his knees, but what he can do, which are facials and punching, he did better than he has in any match in a long time. Okay. So that's about as complimentary as you can get from Dave. And he's saying, hey, he has physical limitations, but boy, he was working.
He came with his work boots. The only thing that and look, yeah, I mean, the people were into it. Again, I have to put on my Jeff Jarrett agent hat, not the talent hat. Look, I had heat on me, and no matter how you slice it and dice it, there were people that wanted to see me get my ass whooped, and that helps everything. It just helps everything when a heel has heat, because you start off, I guess you could say, as my man Cody says, playing with house money. But you know, you start off when the heel has a lot of heat and the crowd's into it. And look, you can also say, oh man, AJ and Daniels, they were completely exhausted, but they also were completely enthralled and engaged. And all right, now we're going to see the main event. So there's two sides to that. The only little snafu that probably, you know, there's 20 good things that I can bring up, but I've always got to focus on that damn one bad thing. Kevin wanted to do the cello spot so bad, and he pitched it early when we knew we were going into this single. And I went, okay, there's kind of a hook there. And Dusty and him got together. The guitar is outlawed. The step made sense. I'm the heel with heat, that I'd use the guitar. And all of a sudden, I pull out the cello, and the people were like, you got to be effing kidding me. And Don and Mike and da-da-da. And hell, I yanked it out, and it broke, and I was so disappointed in that. But anyhow, it was part of the story. But yeah, hats off to Kev. He came with his work boots on.
Let's talk about Dusty Rhodes. He gives another speech before the pay-per-view, and this is written about in the Torch. Normally, we'd been hearing about this from Dave Meltzer, but Wade took to the Torch and wrote this. Dusty Rhodes ruined the mood of all the wrestlers at a big meeting before the start of the pay-per-view on Sunday. He gathered all production staff, agents, office workers, and wrestlers. He said the office staff and production staff had their act together, and now it's time for the wrestlers to get in step with everyone else. He pointed to the ring, making it clear he wasn't happy with the in-ring product. The wrestlers are the people carrying this company right now, says one TNA wrestler. If anything, the booking is what's been weakest of all lately. Rhodes is said to have made younger wrestlers nervous and veterans upset with his comments. He was grumbling to the wrestlers after the botched timing in the final minutes of the Primetime versus Petey Williams match. So listen, as much as the motivational speech maybe worked before the prior pay-per-view, maybe not so much here. Is this what you were concerned about? That, hey man, you do enough of this and eventually it's going to land negatively and it's going to bring everybody down?
And I'm kind of going, this could have been well received by 99.9%. It just takes one person to have this parking lot meeting to say a couple of jabs and jokes. And then all of a sudden, it wasn't received well, which isn't just true. It's not true, but the perception of it all. Again, you kind of open it up. We've already kind of gone through it on this episode. So I don't remember either one. The first one being great and the second one being bad. I think the format is not my cup of tea, and the interpretation, and we're talking about interpretation on two different journalists, if you will.
I've wanted to ask you about this for years, maybe 4 years, certainly 3 years, maybe 4.
Oh boy, here we go.
This is from the Figure 4 Weekly. We don't normally dust off Brian Alvarez's work, but he had this to say.
Oh boy.
You're going to chuckle when I say this.
Oh boy.
Tully Blanchard actually suggested at Wrestle Reunion that he win the title from Jeff Jarrett and lose it back on Impact the following Tuesday, and he was serious. Now, some of you might be saying to yourself, what the hell is a Wrestle Reunion? Well, it was a little convention ran by Sal Cornette down in 2005. It was at the Doubletree Hotel in Tampa, Florida. It was near the end of January 05. And there's only 450 fans there. But, buddy, there was so much talent. Roddy Piper teamed with Jimmy Snuka and Jimmy Valiant to take on Colonel De Beers, Buddy Rose, and Bob Orton Jr. And then Lanny Poffo beat Adam Windsor, who had Dory Funk Jr. in his corner. George South would lose to The Missing Link. Wendy Richter would team with Bambi and Malaya Hasaka and even Jeannie Taylor to take on Sherry Martel, Peggy Lee Leather, and Team Blondage, which is Amber and Chrissy. They had Jim Duggan beating Kamala. They had Ron Bass teaming with Larry Zbyszko to take on Barry Windham and Mike Rotundo. We had the Grappler wrestling the Masked Superstar. America's Most Wanted versus Terry and Dory Funk Jr. Gary Royal and Marty Jannetty. Greg Valentine and Norman Smiley were in a battle royal. The Rock and Roll Express teamed with the Fantastics to take on the Midnight Express. We've got the Christopher Daniels match against Pat Tanaka. We've also got Dusty teaming with Dustin and Mike Graham to take on CM Punk, Abdullah the Butcher, and Kevin Sullivan. What a crazy card this is. But somewhere in there, for the NWA World title, with Kevin Von Erich as a special guest referee, is Jeff Jarrett with Baby Doll in his corner, taking on Tully Blanchard with J.J. Dillon in his corner. And the rumor and innuendo, according to Pondwater Dave, is Tully Blanchard said he blew you up. What happened, Jeff?
Yeah. So I didn't know if you were going to bring Pondwater Dave into this equation.
Easily one of my favorite Jeff Jarrett real-life interactions of my lifetime. When Pondwater Dave, maybe a few sheets to the wind, sits down with Jeff Jarrett and has probably the first conversation he's ever had with Jeff.
And I was signing autographs, right? What I
signing a stack of autographs backstage at Top Guy Weekend. Down plops Pondwater, folds his arms, and just says, Tully Blanchard said he blew you up in Tampa in 05. I don't know what that meant, why he thought he needed to say that or say it that way, but the look on your face and then the look on David Crockett in the background and the idea that it comes out, he actually suggested, apparently, according to Brian Alvarez, Tully suggested he win the NWA title. Do you remember that?
I don't. I really don't. As you were going through those names, Conrad, I had no idea. The Rock and Roll and the Fantastics and an 8-man tag. Like you brushed through.
What a list that is. There's only 450 people there.
CM Punk.
And Abdullah the Butcher are tag partners?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You skimmed through kind of, we could do a whole podcast on this show.
Yes.
Just the matchups. Baby Doll was in my corner, and obviously,
yes.
That's right. But no, I don't. Wait, J.J. Dillon? What a show he put together here. But I don't recall, but that don't have a damn thing to do. He didn't pitch it to me. Yeah, I'm sure he pitched it to others. Tully did. Which, I mean, look, I don't think it's the craziest idea in the world if you kind of work through whatever the story may be. But, we were on Fox Sports Net, and I just don't see it working storyline purposes. But man, I wonder, here's when I read it in the research, who'd he pitch that to? Like Alvarez left that out, and I didn't know it was Alvarez reporting it. But the
Seems
journal,
like- I mean, you're the only guy there, so we would have pitched it to you. Now, I'm not saying that happened. I'm saying that's the report. You're
Yeah.
saying that never happened. Do you remember there ever being a consideration to doing something with Tully? Because
Nope.
since you're working him here in January of 05, it does feel like, hey, if Dusty's booking, and
yeah,
I know once upon a time they didn't get along, but whatever. At that point, that's 20 years ago. Who cares? But
I mean, my best recollection, it was a one-off in Tampa during that time frame. Nothing more or nothing less. It was a convention. They put on a show together. But my God, all this talent they had on there. That's what I love it, man. But I just don't recall that. If you put that card up, good God Almighty, that may be. Can you run through the names just one more time?
I can't. We're out of time, but we will talk about it in the future. I am pumped for us to keep this story going and talk about what's next here on My World. I want to make sure you go out of your way, snag a ticket right now, go see Dusty Rhodes, Dust MJF's ass.
There you go.
It's AEWTIX.com. It's coming to Austin, Texas tomorrow, and maybe he's going to strut around knowing that his dog won the Westminster. What's going on? What's up and down? What's left and right? How's Alabama ranked number 1 in basketball? We'll talk about it all next week. Get those questions coming in because we're talking about a topic I know you can't wait to talk about. Eddie Gilbert is our topic next week, Jeff. How great's that going to be?
Get out of here. That's oh boy. We're going to get in Tommy the father, Dougie the younger brother, but man, oh man, God rest his soul. He left this wrestling world, left the world way too soon, but that is going to be the man who ran over Jerry Lawler in a car as a shoot, brother. But Conrad, you're not going to do it, but I got to say this. Nick Goulish used to end every promo he ever did. Folks, don't miss it. This, whatever, fill in the blank, this Saturday night, the biggest card ever signed right here in Tampa. I was on it, Conrad. The biggest card ever signed. That is unbelievable.
450 people sold out, hanging from the rafters, main event for the belt every night. All this and more bullshit next week, right here on My World.
Peace.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson here to tell you a little more about what adfreeshows.com is all about. Get early, ad-free access to more than a dozen of your favorite wrestling podcasts every single week, starting at just $9. That's less than 20 cents an episode each month. And yes, you can listen to them all directly through Apple Podcasts or your regular podcast apps. How easy is that? Ad-free shows also has thousands of hours worth of bonus content and docuseries like Title Chase, Eric Fires Back, Conversations with Conrad, and The Insiders. Plus new series like The Book with David Crockett, Monday Mailbags with Mike Chioda and Nick Patrick, and a whole lot more. And you want to talk about early? You can't get any earlier than listening to the shows live. You can be a part of the live studio audience as we record the podcast. Plus, ride shotgun alongside your favorite childhood heroes for live watch-alongs, Q&As, and other interactive experiences every single month. Come on now, see for yourself what thousands of other wrestling fans from around the world have discovered, that adfreeshows.com is the best value in wrestling. Check it out today, and hey, when you do, the first week is completely free. Adfreeshows.com.